Hi, this is Sean Constable, head coach of Moss FK, and you're listening to the Nordic podcast. Congratulations on 100 episodes, guys. Amazing. I've got to say that if you listen to the interviews that you've had with me, it's kind of maps out a little bit of my coaching career in Norway. So always much appreciated. Always listening to the pod and reaching out. Congratulations again. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. I'm Steve Wyss and I'm joined as always by Jonathan Fadugba, and this is a rather special episode for us. It is our 100th episode. I almost can't believe it. We've got this far. It's been some innings, my friend. Delighted to celebrate this milestone with you.
Hi Steve, hi everybody. Yes, I don't know whether to sing happy birthday or happy anniversary or to jump for joy, or I don't know what to do really. But yes, we have hit the ton up. It is our anniversary, our birthday, whatever you want to call it. 100 episodes. Who would have thought, Steve, that back in the day, I think it was 2017, when I remember sitting in my garden and we had this kind of an idea in our minds to start this podcast. And we didn't even know how to record episodes, did we? I don't think at the time. And we gradually figured it all out. Who would have thought that a few years later we'd be hitting episode number 100? How are you, my friend? Are you celebrating? Have you got a hat on? How are you feeling about this momentous occasion?
Well, you know me, business as usual. We've got to get down to the nitty gritty, haven't we? You know, the people are listening to hear about the Nordic leagues. They're not here to hear me celebrating by eating a steak. Maybe they are, I don't know. But it's been a great journey. I really must thank all of the listeners, all of the guests we've had, and you know, it's gone a lot better than I thought it would, and we're still going on. I hope people enjoy the product, which we're still trying to improve on the product. And here's to another 100 more. Most
definitely. I mean, what would you say your overriding memories of this podcast? And you know, I've got to say that, you know, last time we had an episode, by the way, I was up nearby you, wasn't I, up in Yorkshire? And as I say, we started this podcast. We worked together in the past, didn't we, Steve? And you know, you've always had an interest in Norwegian football, and you know, I was living out in Sweden at the time, I think, and when I came back, we decided to start this. What are your overriding memories of the 100 episodes? I mean, we've had quite a few good guests, haven't we? We've had some great episodes. We've covered the leagues quite well. There's been, you know, teams coming out like Buda Glimt. You know, we've had surprises. We've had last day. You know, I remember the last day of the season in some years where it was just manic relegation battles or promotion battles or championship, you know, playoffs, things like that. What have been your memories of maybe not only the podcast, but, you know, football during this period of time? You know, your overriding memories.
Yeah, you know, it's the sheer amount of guests we've had. I've had some truly memorable interviews, both good, bad, and ugly, really, I think. A good way to say that. But I think really I'm blown away by the interaction we have. You know, there's genuinely a lot of interest in this league now. I don't think when we first started it was always there. It certainly was in sprinkling doses. I think there's been a lot more interest in this Scandinavian region now. You know, certainly in the English-speaking world, and I think we've hopefully helped grown it a little bit, if you know what I mean. But overriding memories. Back in the day, different editing techniques with the podcasts. Staying up into the early hours, trying to get the edit down how I want it to. I'm still very fussy as it is now. But yeah, things like that. It's crazy really how we've come on, but very enjoyable indeed.
Yeah, I have to say, for those who don't know the mechanics behind the podcast, Steve is our editor, producer. He does a fantastic job, I have to say. You know, I just rock up and talk my talk basically, and try and help with the social media channels. But Steve does a fantastic job editing it meticulously every week. All the ums and ahs that I seem to throw in every now and then. or mannerisms. But yeah, no, it's been, I really enjoyed the journey so far. 100 episodes with you, and I'm sure there'll be many more to come. And I think it's for me personally, I think the title battle, I think it was 2019 Djurgården, the last sort of day of the season 3-way battle. That was brilliant. I thought, Djurgården, I remember at the time they were losing at half time and came back to win the title in the last day of the season. I remember, was it like an 8-way relegation battle in Norway?
I think looking back from a footballing point of view, probably that title race in Sweden was maybe the highlight, because it was so tense and it felt like it was building up towards that, wasn't it? In the episodes prior to it, we really were. I mean, even I was watching it like from start to finish. I had my eye on literally 2 or 3 games at once. I really enjoyed that Hammarby team that year as well. I have to say, I was a massive fan of it, the way they played their football. Yeah, there was the year that Lillestrøm got relegated in the playoff, I think there's about 6 teams who were in the mixer at one point, and there's been some drama. We've had some quality as well, like the Buda Glimt, Malmo years as well. It's been a really interesting mix of stuff, and we've had European success. Molde went deep, Sarpsborg got the group stages. I'm trying to think of some Swedish teams that have gone deep. Malmo probably had a run somewhere, didn't they? But it's been a great period.
Yeah, you're totally right. There's been some really good battles in the years gone by. I enjoyed the Malmo team who did quite well in Europe, and I enjoyed the Malmo team last season. To be honest, I was really impressed with them. The AIK team, Djurgården winning the league after so many years, and one thing I've really enjoyed about this podcast, Steve, which I didn't actually realize beforehand, but we counted it before the show. We've had 36 special guest appearances. So shout out to everybody who's joined us on the show, from Ian Birchinall to Michael Jolly to Vaishali Bardwaj to Sean Constable, Ashley Coffey, Eric Schörner. We could be here naming so many. Then couldn't we? Vigard Hansen. But a lot of special guests. I'm quite surprised there's so many. I'm not sure about yourself. Do you have any fond memories? Thomas Gravesen, anyone like that?
That was the wackiest one. The guy we did the Thomas Gravesen book interview. I've actually forgotten his name, but many of you will not even be aware. Behind the scenes, it just completely kicked off. Basically, it was a crazy situation. It was the most mental preparation to an interview I've ever done. The episode title was an absolute joke on a reference that he did. That was definitely probably the most memorable in the wrong ways. For me, the interview that stood out, the guest that stood out for me was actually Simo Valakari, the ex Tromsø manager. There was something about him. You've got to be a bit wacky, haven't you, to go in a freezing cold ice pool in the middle of winter up there, haven't you? He was a seriously interesting manager. But there's, kudos to all the guests that have come on, and thanks to all of you, and you all added something to the Nordic Football Podcast, and hopefully there'll be many more. There'll be many more to come. It's a lot of just scratch the surface with a lot of interesting people in football. Players, managers, media, the lot.
Definitely. I think it may even be 37, 38, in fact, because there's 1 or 2 that came on 2 episodes, isn't there? And then 1 or 2 that weren't even named in the title, things like that. So no, but there's been so many. I think the Gravesen episode will always stick in my mind just because of the sort of sheer randomness of it. That will always be a fond memory of mine, and the behind the scenes stuff, Steve, as you mentioned there. I think we tried to do a book giveaway.
Didn't we? Like a book on it, couldn't you? Crazy.
I think we tried to do a book giveaway, and it kind of let's just say it fell flat on its face quicker than Thomas Gravesen at Real Madrid. But no, it's been fantastic, and I think just gonna we even had a guest on, didn't we? A listener, Ted Cruz, my son, and just gonna read before we get into the episode. Just gonna read a comment by him. He said, "By far my favorite appearance was when I made an appearance." So. We know which is his favorite episode. Thank you to Odin's Creation. And as we go along in this episode, we will be sort of having a few shout outs from people and things like that. A few comments from people. So yeah, thanks to everyone who's listened, as I've said. Anyone has left a comment. If you follow us on Twitter at Nordic Footpod, really appreciate it. It's great to get to 100 episodes. Some podcasts, I think there's a statistic that says like something like 98% of podcasts don't get past the 10th episode or something like that. So crazy statistics, but we're still going strong. And on that note, why don't we do what we are here for in the first place, which is get into the latest action in Norway and Sweden. Steve, there's been some games this evening, haven't there? We're going to start with the Eliteserien this evening because we've got some big wins, haven't we? Starting off with Stabæk.
Yeah, we're in a bit of a weird phase at the minute that it's a catch-up period. Because at the start of the season, if you remember, a bunch of teams weren't able to play early doors because of COVID and things like that, and logistics. But so there was 4 matches played on the 21st of July, and then 4 matches were played tonight at the time of recording. That's on the 28th of July. And the next games are going to be on the 8th of August. And there's 5 matches there. And then finally, round 15, when that starts on the 14th of August, that's when we're getting back to normal. Pretty much everyone plays every week. And that's it. But yeah, Stabæk with a victory tonight against Mjøndalen. First win for new Stabæk coach, Eirik Schoner, who we have as a guest on this podcast a few weeks ago. The young 30-year-old coach. And, you know, his team served him really well in this game against Mjøndalen. It's given them a chance. It's given them hope in the table. Up to 9 points now. And Mjøndalen on 12. They're the nearest safe position. Tromsø just on 10 in the playoff spot. So it's an important win for Stabæk. If you look at the recent form in the bottom half, for all of the bottom 7 teams, Stabæk are the only team who've had a victory in any of their last 3 games out of all those sides, said Jonathan.
Yeah, has there been any sort of noticeable changes since trying to come in? Has there been anything you've immediately noticed, or is it kind of a gradual, does he need to stamp his mark on the team first, you know what I mean?
I think mentality is what I've noticed. Against Mjøndalen, I didn't think they'd do that well in this game because Mjøndalen are an experienced side. They're physical bullies. They're canny. They game manage really well. And I thought they'd probably beat Stabæk on maybe a set-piece goal or something, and Stabæk would probably kill themselves with mistakes like they normally do. But they dug in really well here, Stabæk, and they defended well. The goalkeeper, Sandberg, I thought had a good match. They needed him to deliver today, and he just, Mjøndalen put a lot of balls in from set-pieces, crosses, and he kind of handled it pretty well. Conceded a late penalty, but I thought he was a bit unlucky. So he's had a poor season, Sandberg. It really has been disappointing, but it was a much better performance. So I think mentality, you got to be tough, haven't you? You got to be tough mentally in this league sometimes when you're down there. And I wasn't sure this current Stabæk proper players had the stomach for that sort of fight yet, anyway. But fair play to them. They've delivered a 3 points there, and of course they've got technical quality. We know that. We know they can play football. There's some good youngsters, but it's not always about that, is it? It's about the other parts of football.
Yeah, and Stabæk's expected goals against, by the way, is the worst in the Eliteserien by a country mile, really. 32.3 XGA. Next best is Brand, 24.81. So, they both conceded 27 goals, but that is some massive difference on the XGA. So I guess from that point of view, Eirik Schoner, who's been one of those 36 guests we've had in this podcast, one of his first tasks will probably be to try and tighten up that leaky defence. Just looking at the other end of that XGA, the best team in the league SGA-wise is Bodø/Glimt, 13.81 SGA, and second is Lillestrøm, 15.2 XGA, which is second best in the league. Molde, some way back, by the way, 8th in the table for XGA. So despite the fact that they're kind of doing very well, their expected goals against is actually quite high. It leads us on to the next team, isn't it, that you want to talk about? Because you've said a few things to me off air about this team, and I don't know if I'm going to out you or not. But let's see how you play it, and then we'll go from there. Lillestrøm is a team you want to talk about, and they've had a bit of success lately, haven't they?
Yeah, watch out for an article that is going to come out on Y-Scout very soon. I'm writing about Lillestrøm because they have had a really... I actually said pre-season they were my dark horse to do well. And I thought in the first few rounds that I was going to be let down badly, but they've come back strongly. They're unbeaten in 9 matches now, Lillestrøm. They're up to 24 points. If they win their game in hand, which is against Sandefjord next week, then they would actually go second place behind, just 3 points behind Molde. And I've got to give kudos to the manager, Eirik Bakke, who's completely changed the system. Whenever I've seen Bakke manage, he's always been 4-4-2 or 4-3-3, but he's developed this really interesting sort of 3-4-2-1 system, which you would never have expected of him in a million years, but it's worked an absolute treat. They've become really solid defensively from it, and it's given them dynamic options in attack. And they're enjoying the football, Lillestrøm. Things are going their way, like tonight against Sarpsborg. They could have fallen behind. Sarpsborg missed a couple of big chances. If those go in, it's a different ball game. But then Lillestrøm take their chances because things are going their way. I don't think they're at the level of the likes of Molde, Buda Glimt, even probably Rosenborg eventually. So I can't see them challenging for the league. But you know what? The spot's available for sure this year, and there's no real banker position. And this is maybe a good chance for them to regain some of their really good days. It's good to see, really. Actually, they're a big club and they've had some down years.
Who would you say have been some of their better players this season? Because I see Thomas Lennart Olsen with 8 goals. Has he been a standout? And what would you put this success down to? Because you did say in pre-season, you predicted them to finish 7th, which was, as you've mentioned, they were quite brave for a team that was newly promoted. Who are the sort of key men behind this rise, or is it a managerial thing, tactics? What do you attribute this to?
The manager's a very good manager. He took Sarpsborg to the Europa League group stages, which is for me one of a phenomenal achievement. Like I just watched him last week when they scored a goal, go 3-1 up against Stabæk. He's on the sideline shouting wildly. He's not getting carried away, celebrating. He's telling them to use their heads and stuff like that. He's a very experienced manager. And in terms of players, there's been some standouts. Yeah, Thomas Lennart Olsen's been a beast. I think Lennart Olsen's always been a really good striker at this level. He's proven goal scorer, but the whole attacking system is really suited to suit him. They feed him beautifully. There's 2 areas that he wants the ball. He wants it on his head, or he wants it sort of like a poacher sliding in, and that they nail it. They get the ball to him perfectly. Yermund Assen, I think, has been superb. Now he's released from his sort of Rosenborg, not nightmare, but down years. Helen scored that goal against Rosenborg, which was really memorable. And they've got some young defenders that are doing well. Ogbu, I think, has really impressed me. Lars Ranger has looked good. And the goalkeeper, actually, Christensen, stood out to me as well. There's a good mix of youth and experience in this team. The system's working well. And, they've got a goal scorer that's just, you can't do no wrong at the moment. So it's a combination of factors, really, for Lillestrøm. But there's nothing lucky about their points or their goals. If you look at their XG and stuff, it's pretty much where they're expected to be. So it's perfectly legitimate right now.
Yeah, with 10 goals in 12 games, that's quite incredible for Lennart Olsen, isn't it? He's a 30-year-old, mainly spent the predominant years of his career in Norway. I don't actually know if he's ever even left Norway. He's got 50 goals in 139 Eliteserien games. He's also played 120 games in the Obos League, and so a bit of a veteran, isn't he, on the sort of Norwegian scene? And it looks like he's having maybe one of the best years of his career, to be honest. 20% of his goals in one season already. So it looks like he's doing fantastically well there. Where do you see this team going realistically, Steve? I mean, we're only we're approaching the halfway stage of the season now. They've played 13 games, they've got a game in hand, could even go second. Where are you looking up or down with them? Do you think they'll sort of average to the mean, or do you think they can continue this form?
For me, they're finishing the top 6 this season. And then long term, I'm looking upwards because they've got a manager. If you remember, when he was at Sarpsborg, there was probably a year or two, we always kind of talked about them as almost a dark horse to win the league when he was at Sarpsborg. Now, Sarpsborg, they're not a small club by any means, but Lillestrøm is going to have more resources there. So if you give Bakker the tools to work with and maybe improve the squad even more going forward, maybe why not challenge for a gold medal one day? Because, you can look at what Buda Glimt did last year. It seems like the giants of Norwegian football, Rosenborg, are sort of in this lull right now. Molde can have their up and downs. We know that. So I think long term, if Lillestrøm play their cards right, they should be in the top 6 every year now. If they just get the right signings and keep the manager and stuff like that. So I'm very, very positive about their future, actually. And then, this season, this is a great chance for them to maybe punch above their weight and finish above where they should. I think that probably the ceiling is the second place. I don't think Molde win the league for me. I don't think anyone beats them to the league. But they could probably get second as the highest. I would say.
Very interesting stuff, and let's move on because there's been another sort of managerial change, hasn't there, in Norway, which you kind of did say it was probably inevitable, something that you felt was coming for some time, and with nearly half of the season gone now, it's trigger time, isn't it? And it's Brann.
Yeah, and it's just the thing is, Kari Ingebrigtsen, it just wasn't going to work out in the end. There was too much pressure on the team. He had to win some games recently. He was just picked up too many draws. A home match against Tromsø, Mjøndalen, just got 2 draws out of it. It's not enough. And I think in both games they were guilty of just the pressure got to them. The players were clearly under the heat. The manager, I certainly don't blame him for everything at all. It's just like the Mjøndalen match. He set them up the way he could set them up, and they missed chances. It's as simple as that. It looked like they were going to lose the game in the end, but only for a 96-minute equaliser. But at the minute, the joint managerial duo in charge, Erik Horneland and Andrea Luberto, who was another guest on this podcast just this season, that is until they find a permanent manager. And bad news also for Brann. Dauda Bamba's now left the club to Turkish side Altay. Bambu's actually had a very good season this year. He was probably one of the few bright sparks for them. So I think they've got a big transfer window to come up, Brann. They're still bottom of the table. I don't know whether they are going to find a permanent manager this season or not. They probably could do with that. They've actually got to realistically look at Obosligaen as a possibility now. Shockingly. I mean, they have been down there before in a shock relegation, so it's not like it's brand new territory for Brann if it was to happen. But I just feel because there was so much pressure on Ingebrigtsen, sometimes you just sense when things just not going their way, that will ease a little bit of pressure now that the manager's been sacked. Maybe can free a few players up. There's enough talent there that to at least fight strongly against relegation, and then maybe in the transfer window give them some players to get out of it.
Yeah, with 3 draws in their last 4 games, league games. Of course, they've played a cup game, but they've only lost 1 of their last 4, basically. Do you see sort of the roots of them maybe starting to turn things around, or is that just a bit of just good fortune in recent weeks? Do you see any signs that they could, the next few games are Sandefjord at home, so Strømsgodset away, Haugesund at home, and then Lillestrøm away, Tromsø away. So they've got a bit of a run of games there that they could maybe rack up some points, or do you think it's almost too late already?
I don't think they've been that bad. They lost their first 6 games, but most of those were against very good teams. They've missed some crucial penalties at times. But honestly, since round 6, I think the only really bad performance for me was the one against Odd away. At home they lost that 3-1, but they've suffered a lot of late goals against them. Crucial moments at both ends of the field, it's gone wrong. But it's not like they've been smashed here, there, and everywhere. A lot of these results, if you look at them, they're quite close. So I felt they were on the right track, but because of such a bad start they had, the noose was already around their neck so tight that there was hardly any wriggle room at all for the manager. And ultimately, it does come down to results and points, doesn't it? And if they kept him any longer, it's an ongoing soap opera of a story, distraction for the players. And I think it's just one of those, it had to be done. I do have some sympathy for Ingebrigtsen, but I think in the end they had no other decision to make.
Yeah, and we wish Andrea Luberto all the best. To be honest, not sure if he owes us an assist for this new job, because, like you say, he was only on a few weeks ago. So I think he was one of our most recent guests. So if you go back in our archives, follow us on Twitter at Nordic Foot Pod, or if you go on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, subscribe, hit the subscribe button. Even if it's because it's 100th episode, maybe leave a comment, leave a nice little rating. Can always help. It always helps boost us up the ratings and things like that. So yeah, if you've got time, but yeah, if you want to go back, you can listen to our interview with Andrea Luberto. I did find him very, very insightful. Actually, I found that a very intriguing interview. He was someone who clearly understands the game, has been around, hasn't he, in Norwegian football, Scandinavian football, newest stuff. So I must say, I'm not entirely surprised he's back in work, but yeah, maybe owes us a cheeky beer on that one. But yeah, let's move on now to Europe. And you've obviously both our teams have been in action. In part 2, we'll talk about Sweden, of course, the latest in Sweden. But for now, Steve, let's pick up on the results involving Norwegian teams. How's things looking in Europe at this moment in time?
Yeah, it was disappointing to see Bodø/Glimt get knocked out of the Champions League by Lechia Warsaw. I mentioned that on the last episode. But they recovered they dropped out of the Conference League qualification, and a nice comfortable win for them in Iceland against Valur. 3-0. The second legs played Thursday, the 29th of July. So if you are listening to this properly, the second legs are in. But if they blow a 3-0 lead, going back to the home match, I would be. Well, I was going to say I'll go vegan for a week, but I made another promise on Twitter there recently to do with the French team. So I'm not going to say that again. But no, they look good. Rosenborg had a 2-0 win against another Icelandic side, FH, I'm going to call them. I don't want to do the full pronunciation. And Vålerenga, sadly, 4-0 defeat against Ghent. In Belgium now. I mean, I feel they drew on the short straw terribly there. That's about as hard a draw as they possibly could have had. And so, yeah, not good for them, but looks like Rosenborg bridge again. Molde had a good win against Swiss side Servette. That was 3-0, I do believe. And I want to give a massive shout out, actually, to the Faroese side, HB Torshavn. They are through to the next round of Conference League qualifying. 6-0 on aggregate against Buduknost. And I forget what country they're actually from, but I do know Torshavn were the big underdogs in both legs, and they won both matches 4-0 and 2-0. So a huge shout out to HB Torshavn of the Faroe Islands making it through. But yeah, generally decent results in these Conference League qualifiers for Norwegian teams. Take Vålerenga out of that, but for me it's no disgrace. Hopefully all three will not do anything stupid in the second leg, and we get teams into the next phase.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, looking at the Conference League, I mean, UEFA have not only added a new competition, they've added a hell of a lot of games, haven't they? I mean, this slate is like a scroll reading the amount of games that's coming up this week in the Conference League. So good luck to our teams. Of course, you've also got Finnish teams, you've got Danish teams, things like that. CFC Honka playing against Domzali. We've got Cups as well, teams like that as well in our leagues. We'll talk a little bit about Beko Häcken in the next game against Aberdeen. Of course, Elfsborg are playing Milsami. So, yeah, lots of games there. And we wish all our teams well. I think, is it Hafnar Fjordur? Is that the name of that team?
Do you know, that'll do? That'll do me. It sounds pretty good, actually. But FH, I think, will is my preference there.
We'll leave it at FH then. Coming up in part 2, we will move on to Sweden. We've got quite a bit to talk about in Sweden. Obviously, we've got the European games. We're going to give a shout out to 1 or 2 players, and the transfer window is also open. So we will just dip into 1 or 2 sort of big transfers along the way. So, join us in part 2 as we continue this 100th episode of the Nordic Football Podcast.
Hello, this is Andrea Luberto. Happy 100th birthday Nordic Podcast. It was an absolute pleasure to be involved with yourselves, and I hope we can do it again in the near future.
A 100 episodes of the Nordic Football Podcast. What an achievement. It's been an absolute pleasure tuning in to all of the episodes for the last couple of years. Some incredible content. You guys are fantastic at what you do. Wishing you all the best, and congratulations once again. Here's to 100 more.
Hi, this is Ashley Coffey of AFC Eskilstuna, and you're listening to the Nordic Football Podcast. Just wanted to say a big congratulations on 100 episodes on the channel. It's brilliant content. I always enjoy listening to the different guests and speakers that are on there. I really enjoyed my interview with Jonathan a couple of weeks ago. It was really enjoyable to do, speaking about my time in Sweden and progressing through the leagues over here. So again, big congratulations, and hopefully you can produce many more episodes on the channel. Speak soon. Bye.
Welcome back to the Nordic Football Podcast, episode number 100. I just want to say a massive thanks to the guys who have given us some fantastic words of encouragement there. The legend that is Sean Constable, right at the start of the episode. He has been on here for several interviews. One absolute legend, currently managing Moss in Norway. Andrea Luberto, who is now the joint manager at Brann. Charlotte Patterson, long-time supporter of the podcast, on Patreon as well. Really appreciate you, Charlotte. And of course, Mr. Ashley Coffey, who we had a fantastic interview with just a few weeks ago. By the way, for those who were wondering about the Norwegian section, didn't talk about any transfers this episode. The next episode, going to go really into town about a lot of the big deals that have been going on in Norway recently. There's been quite a lot of stuff that needs talking about, so that will be a big section. But Jonathan, are you enjoying this 100th episode so far?
I'm loving it. I've got a bit of cake for anyone who maybe might not know. It was my birthday quite recently. I took a trip up to Yorkshire, near you, to the Yorkshire Dales, so I've still got a bit of leftover birthday cake.
Oh, and, happy 40th, mate.
Hey, none of that. None of that, lad. But I'm enjoying the episode. I'm enjoying my cake, and that's great to, like I say, it's a great milestone. I'm going to read out a comment, actually, if you don't mind, from Twitter. Just a little bit more self-indulgence. From Team Overs, who has backed our Patreon for some time as well, so need to give you a massive shout out at Here for Football. He said, we asked her for memories on Twitter, so if you've got any memories of the show or memories of Norwegian football, Swedish football over the last sort of 3-4 years, reasons you got into it, maybe you've listened to the show and you kind of got you into the leagues or something like that, or a player or anything like that, please tweet us at Nordic Footpod and we'll retweet them and we'll sort of leave some comments as well. Team Overs, we asked earlier in this evening to give some memories. He said, a few years back, I was in Las Vegas. It was in the middle of summer with nothing to bet on. I saw that some books had Sweden and Norway, and I searched for info on the leagues, and I found you guys. I remember betting all overs and hitting on every bet listener ever since. So I definitely think Meat Man Soccer, the betting expert, you got some part to play in that, and I'm glad we were able to pick some winners for you there, Team Overs. Thanks so much for your support. You've been a loyal listener for many a time now, so we really appreciate your support on Patreon, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. If you want to buy us a beer or whatever to celebrate, some more cake maybe. But yeah, no, I'm joking. But Team Overs is a great listener and always leaves interesting comments. Steve, I mean, we have done some bonus pods, haven't we, on Patreon this season in the first half of the season. Do you think that's something we'll revive at some point? We were having quite a good success rate, weren't we? We were on about 50% success rate. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, just going back to Team Over's comment there, I'm just glad we didn't start doing a French football podcast. Otherwise, he would have lost every bet, wouldn't he? With the lack of goals in that league. Definitely. Look, we got into a good rhythm early in the season with that. I think it seemed to, when Sweden went on its sort of summer break, it kind of ended, didn't it, with us? But hopefully we can do some more bonus content this year. Really appreciate all of you patrons. Especially the ones that have been with us right since the start. Seriously, guys, you're absolute legends, and you probably not really had enough value for money in that section. It's something I really would like to put right on a more regular basis, but totally appreciate you all.
Pick up your phone on a Thursday, mate, and then we'll start recording them. That's all I can say. But no, I'm joking. But and also that was we have to say a massive thank you to Ashley Coffey there for leaving a voice note. Really appreciate it. He was a great guest as well. Another Yorkshireman. I don't know what it is with Yorkshire and Scandinavia, but I feel like having visited the Yorkshire Dales, I'm almost becoming an honorary Yorkshireman these days. With the amount of,
you'll end up living here, like genuinely, all the influence.
You never know. You never know. The influence around me is kind of, and like I say, the Yorkshire Dales is a beautiful place, by the way. If you've never been, I'm not trying to be a tourist board member here or anything like that, but it's really, really good for like walks and stuff like that. I really enjoyed my time, I have to say. I was lucky I got the good weather. Today was a thunderstorm where I am. So, I was glad I wasn't there that today. But let's move on. Thanks a lot, Ashley, as well. And also thanks to Sean your message at the beginning of the show. Fantastic to hear from you as always out in Norway. We might even get you back for maybe a fourth appearance on the pod. But let's move on to like you say, the games in Europe, and it was a big win big passage for Malmo to get through HJK. It was 4-3 on aggregate in the end.
Yeah, if you look at the results for this time, this was a close game, and kudos to HJK Helsinki, who I've got to be honest, have seemed a lot better this season than they have been in previous years. But Malmo were within a goal of this. Nearly went to extra time. Of course, away goals don't count now. So the prize for Malmo is a 2-legged tie against Rangers of Scotland, and of course, who are now the only remaining representative left from the SPL in the Champions League. Celtic have been eliminated by fellow Scandinavian opposition, FC Midtjylland. Massive congratulations to them, getting the prize scalp of Celtic. Although bigger challenges will await them, I'm sure, going forward if they want to make the group stage. But Malmo against Rangers, then that's the match coming up. Big fixture this for both sides. This is the furthest I can remember Malmo getting in the Champions League qualifying for several years. They've often flopped at this stage. Are they starting to sort of dream of the group stage, do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to say is HJK, by the way, they put in a great effort. It was a really, I didn't catch the full game, but in terms of highlights and when you look at the stats, one thing to note for sure was just the fans. And this is a theme I'm going to come up to a lot in probably this part of the show. It makes such a difference, doesn't it? And it was a really, like you say, it was a really close fought game, actually. And HJK can feel slightly unlucky. It was a 2-2 draw, obviously, in Finland. Tenio scored a goal from a header from a corner, and the fans behind the goal, the Finnish fans went crazy, by the way. But Christensen sort of in the 10th minute scored a decent goal. Actually, it was a well taken strike, and then a really fantastic goal from Berman Savic, who he's starting to come into a bit of prominence now at Malmo. He also got a goal just at the weekend, just gone. In their 2-0 win at Mjällby. It was a bit lucky, really. Massive goalkeeping howler, I'll be honest. But you still got to be there to put it in the net. So he's really, it was a wonderful sort of 1-2 and a lovely hit. He's really starting to come into his own. Helsinki got one back 77th minute to make it 2-2, to push it, nearly all the way. But they could really feel hard done by, to be honest. They missed an open goal. They nearly had you could argue maybe they could have had 2 penalties, maybe 50-50 calls. Had a lot of chances, good efforts in good areas. But in the end, Malmo, I think Thomason, and this is something that maybe Rangers fans might be listening to, that they may look at Jondal Thomason. You may remember him, the former AC Milan player, Newcastle United as well. He won the title in his first season last year with Malmo. He's done really well, but this season the cohesion hasn't really quite been right. Now, in this game against Helsinki, he changed formation. Jonas Knudsen was missing, so he went to a 3-4-2-1, and it didn't really work, to be honest. First half, it kind of, they were a bit static. They weren't that dangerous, and he had to change things up basically to kind of get something and resolve it. Obviously, they won the first leg, and that's kind of what took them through. But the manager, Helsinki, after the game, Steve, was kind of. He was almost furious. I mean, he was really disappointed. He came out and said, we were much better than Malmo. Everything went against us. He kind of, you could argue it was a bit of a hard done by story. The referee was Stuart Atwell, by the way. So, more English, criticism of English referees, I guess. He said that all the decisions went against us. This is Tony Koskela, the manager of HJK. And yeah, as you say, he said, I respect the result. I'm very proud of us. But we should have had a better result here and taken it into extra time. So, yeah, some refereeing issues there, maybe you could argue. But in terms of Malmo, as you said, with Rangers, I think the one player that we will come to maybe a bit later, Antonio Kolak, I think is someone I want to sort of just give a little bit of praise to. I think he will be the danger man for Rangers fans to maybe look out for, a striker who's having a really, really good season. But in general, I'll be totally honest with you, they probably could be got at this Malmo team. I don't think they're maybe as strong as last season. I don't think they've quite found their form yet. They are top of the league. Djurgården have a game in hand, but it's 2 points and they're top. They've got plus 15 goal difference, 31 goals scored in 13 matches, 16 conceded, which is quite high. 16 conceded. That's more than Mjällby, who are third bottom of the league. So it shows you that the balance is, they're scoring a lot, but they're also quite leaky at the back. And Thomason's tried to bring in this sort of style of kind of Dutch style of play, if you know what I mean. Like he's trying to bring in this sort of technical passing game into Malmo along with their strong core. But they've had some injuries. People like Ola Toivonen got a bad injury. Some key men from last season have gone, and they're sort of they're still, I would say, just finding themselves. Boban Savic's done really well. They've had a few young players come in through to the team now, things like that. But I would say for Rangers fans, they can maybe look with some optimism towards this game. It'll be a very big game, I think, for Malmo, and they've already started maybe the quote unquote mind games, because they've already come out and said that Rangers will be the clear favourites. Everyone will expect them to win. We're the underdogs, and they're already sort of starting that underdog narrative, which I think is true to a certain extent. But everyone likes to paint themselves as an underdog, don't they? Can create some team spirit and some backs against the wall type mentality. So it's going to be a really interesting game, actually. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and if you're a Rangers fan listening now, and I'd imagine most Rangers fans are feeling pretty good about life. Celtic have just gotten knocked out. They won the league last year. And, they might see this draw as one of the easy ones they could have had. I don't know. But if you are, if the Rangers fans who are listening, which couple of players have they got to really fear in this Malmo team? Who they got to look out for?
Yeah, I mentioned it. I mentioned it just now. I think if there's one player in this Malmo team that I think you need to keep an eye on, it's Antonio Kolak. Now, this is a player who there's an interesting backstory here, which I have mentioned in previous shows. So if anyone who listens regularly has heard this before, then of course apologies, but it's a story that's worth repeating because I find it really fascinating. Now, beginning of the season, of course, in Sweden, it was dominated by one player, and that was, of course, Marek Hamzik. Now, Hamzik, Napoli legend, one of the all-time, great players in Serie A in Napoli's history, outscored Maradona, a legend of the game, really, in the last 20 years or so. He went, of course, from China and he moved to EFK Göteborg, and that was a massive, massive transfer. It was all that anyone talked about for weeks. We had a massive episode in the show, didn't we, Steve? We talked about him a lot. But he's left the league now. Didn't really pull up many trees. There were some arguments that he just came to Sweden to get fit for the Euros and pretty much he left straight after, to be honest. But in the midst of that furore, what happened was a player by the name of Antonio Kolak, 27 years old, Croatian centre forward. He came out and he joined Malmo. Of course, he was loaned to Malmo from PAOK in Greece, and he came out and said he used to play for Hoffenheim. He played for Rijeka as well in Croatia, and he came out and he said, "I will be a bigger player than Marek Hamzik." Now, anyone who listened to the show, like I said, you'll remember this because I remember pointing this out, and I was like, "This is some big statements," and you got a bit of confidence about you to make that kind of claim. And I remember at the time, to be honest, I was a little bit dismissive of it. I kind of was thinking to myself, who is this guy? And I'm sure many others probably did as well. It was quite a sort of bold statement to make. But in fairness to him, if there's one thing I like about footballers, it's people who can talk the talk and walk the walk when it comes to it. And Antonio Kolak is walking the walk, to be fair to him. He's got 7 goals in 11 Allsvenskan games, 3 goals in their Champions League qualifiers so far in 4 games. That's a total of 10 goals in 15 appearances in about 1,200 minutes. So, he's really racking up goals at a good ratio. He's been fantastic, to be honest. He's got 1 cap for Croatia, but he's never really been a player that I've kind of, it's been on my radar, I'll be honest. Like I say, he played for Hoffenheim for a while. He had some spells in Germany and Poland, but he's been one player who really has impressed me at this moment in time. Now, there is already now talk. He's probably become the best player, best striker, you could argue, in the league. There's already talk now about tying him down to a new deal, getting him on a permanent transfer. Negotiations are sort of starting to take place, basically, long and short of it. So we'll see what happens. But if any Rangers fans listening to this thinking, who should I look out for, then Kolak would be my number one. I think Rangers backline's really going to have to be careful about him and really keep an eye on him. He's a lively player, very good penalty box player. He can sniff out chances, he can sniff out a goal. He's a good finisher, very alert, confident in himself in terms of how he approaches the game. He's a forward-thinking player. He's not afraid to take a shot. So I really like him, actually. I've been really impressed with him at Allsvenskan level. and I think he'll be a danger man. I think I also mentioned Berman Savic. He's a player who, again, he's a new signing for Malmo this season, and he's started to become a bit more decisive now. He's been praised a lot. There was some comments this week saying, no one can do what he does, that kind of thing. Anders Christiansen described him as it said, it's fantastic to have a player like him in my side. Yondal Thomason came out and said, I love him. He's a young guy with extremely good qualities. His name's Veljko Berman-Savic. He was signed from Kukuriki in Serbia. So he's a kind of, he can play on the wide, he can play on the channels. He can cut inside as well. He's not the quickest, I would say. Any Rangers fan listening to this, probably the one area that I would always say with Malmo they lack a little bit is pace. I don't think they have a huge amount of pace in their team. That you can maybe exploit them from that point of view. I think if you have midfield runners, for example, against Anders Christiansen, who's getting on in years, he's been a legend in Allsvenskan for many, many years, but he's getting on. There's a few other players on that side who are maybe past 30. The defense, I think, lacks maybe a little bit of pace in it. So if I was identifying how Rangers can win that match, I would say if they can overload pace and things like that, I'm sure Steven Gerrard and his team will be looking at that. But Berman-Savic is certainly going to be one could be a bit of a wild card. And then, of course, Christiansen in the midfield, he, on the ball, is very good. He's someone you got to look out for. He can dictate the tempo, and I'm sure they'll have plans for him. But yeah, it's really, if you're looking for one player, Kolak is the man at this moment in time. He's the man banging in the goals, and he is a danger man.
And do you have a prediction for this tie, or are you going to be sitting on the fence?
I think I might sit on the fence, to be honest. If you ask me, can Malmo get through? Let's look at it from the Nordic perspective. Then I think the answer is yes. But if you're asking me, will they get through? Then I haven't seen enough of Rangers to really comment. I know they'll be the favourite, but I probably am going to sit on the fence just out of the fact that I haven't seen enough of Rangers to really know where they can hurt Malmo. So I think they can be got at. I think it will be close, maybe in the first leg, that kind of thing. I think fans will affect things. Malmo have got a very good atmosphere in their stadium, and obviously, Ibrox is a proud stadium. So, long story short, yes, I'm going to sit on the fence till the second leg, and then I'll have a bit more info and insight into Rangers, I think.
I think it's going to be a good watch. I think it's going to be close. I don't think anyone's going to run away with it. Malmo, they do have European experience as well as Rangers do recently. So you'd have to get, Rangers are the rightful favourites, I think. But interesting tie there, and all the best to Malmo. Although we're on the subject of Europe, there was a good win for Elfsborg against a team from Moldova called Milosami, and Milosami actually ended the match with 8 men. Jonathan, in this game, they've done well to only lose 4-0, haven't they? Really, this team from Moldova. So yeah, great win there for Elfsborg. Hammarby, a 3-1 win against Maribor. That's a pretty good outcome, isn't it? And who am I missing out? Häcken with a shambolic result against Aberdeen. I actually watched that game. They lost 5-1, and I couldn't believe how poor they were. I don't think. Am I missing someone else out from Sweden? I don't think I am. But I as for this, the Häcken game, mate, I couldn't believe how shocking they were. They made Aberdeen look like Barcelona at times.
Yeah, I was disappointed with this on 2 counts. One, the result, which I couldn't believe it, to be honest. Especially with the new manager come in and done so well for Häcken. They've really turned things around in the league. They've really climbed up the table. They had a terrible start to the season, but they're now 7th in the table. So they've really turned things around. They were in the bottom 2 just before the break. So, he's come in and done really well domestically. But yeah, hugely shocking result, to be honest. They haven't lost since May, Häcken in the league. So that just tells you kind of, how well they've been doing. But yeah, the other thing that disappointed me a little bit, and I'm not one to call people out, but the game hasn't been uploaded on Wyscout yet, so I haven't even been able to watch it back. So yeah, slightly disappointed about that. I don't know if it's some sort of Conference League thing. I don't know, but it's not on Wyscout either. So yeah, I can't comment on this game in any way, shape, or form, unfortunately. So I'm leaving.
Really, I watched it all. I was a friend of mine who came on the podcast last year, Hunkleberry Finn. He actually purchased this game and he streamed it privately for me. Along with a few others. So I watched all of it. I mean, he was loving life. Like that was like, I mean, they've got a new manager as well this year, but Aberdeen totally bullied Häcken. I remember something you said at the start of the season, that they can be very soft defensively and mentally sometimes when a team gets on top of them. And that is exactly what happened here. They couldn't handle the strong physical players like Scott Brown, J. Emmanuel Thomas, ex Bristol City, I think. I mean, he's a big unit, and they couldn't get on top of him. I thought the goalkeeper, Abrahamson, had a shocking game. And I know he had made that really good save early in the season, which was like wowzers. But he just couldn't handle any of the crosses coming in. They did them on set pieces. And 5-1, Aberdeen totally deserved the win. And there's no way they could turn that around, surely. So that's in the bag for Aberdeen, I reckon. I mean, fair play to them. They played well. I mean, if Aberdeen play like that, who knows? Maybe they're even a dark horse for the SPL this year. But I think Häcken, it just shows how I think they're still very, very delicate, Jonathan. They're maybe focusing on making sure that nothing silly happens in the league, and stuff like that. But seriously soft underbelly if you get at them.
Yeah, I mean that's always been my concern with them. They can be got at. They are quite a young side in terms of they have got a sort of spine of experience, but in certain key positions, I still think they're quite a young team, if that makes sense. Like I say, I'm very surprised about it. I mean, I know that the expectation should be higher, but Häcken always seems to do this in Europe. I remember a couple of years ago they got destroyed by AZ Alkmaar as well. I think it was 3-0 at home and just went out with a whimper. It might have even been 4-0, but yeah, I think they're just a bit naive, Häcken, in that sense, and I'm glad I didn't do any podcasts before this game, because I would have probably tried to talk them up. I would have never seen that coming out.
Same. Yeah, I honestly, I mean, the bookies' odds were pretty close to that game. I actually personally fancied Häcken over the two legs to probably edge them, especially as Aberdeen was just their first competitive game of the year. I never saw that coming in a million years. But it wasn't a fluke or anything. It's just like deserved. So, yeah, disappointing for Häcken. But they've probably got bigger fish to fry, haven't they, in the league, really, after the start they had.
Well, they've not given up. I mean, Per-Mathias Hogmo, the new manager, has come out and said, we've got every chance. We're going to go and see what we can do, basically. He said, we're not going to give up. We have to move forward. And he said 2 goals in each half and we are in the race. So, that's fighting talk, to be fair to him. They're clearly going to go for it. But the question is, can they actually have enough possession to rack up those sort of chances to score 2 goals in each half? Because they're going to need to be absolutely on it, really, realistically, to keep them, to score that many goals and also keep Aberdeen at bay. So, yeah, you probably think it's a dead tie. One thing I know about Häcken, they do have a tendency to throw everything at something. So, being at home and everything like that, they will go for it. So I think it's a game that, if you've got a fair few hours, watch it, because it will be end to end. There's no doubt about that. They'll throw everything at it, but it will either end up in sort of triumph, or it's going to be, disastrous. It could end up being 10-1 or something. An aggregate 10-4 or something like that. So, it's we'll see how it goes. But, a few bits of injury news. Dalaho Erendust and Samuel Gustafsson will both miss the game as well. So a bit of a blow there as well, and from that point of view. So let's see how it goes.
Okay, well, let's move to domestic matters in Sweden. And the Allsvenskan continued its return. Results that stood out for you in this particular round, Jonathan? Anything really there?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few games that stood out. I mean, just on the subject of Kolak, just fantasy matters. I made 2 changes to my team this week and captain Kolak, and he wasn't even in the squad. So I don't know what happened there against Mjällby, but they swiped away. Maybe it's preparation for Europe. Or, I've no real idea what happened there, but Kolak didn't feature. But they saw off Mjällby 2-0 quite easily. As I mentioned, an absolute howler from Mjällby's goalkeeper for the second goal, unbelievable, and an own goal as well. I think the game that really caught my eye in terms of 2 games caught my eye, I would say. I watched Hammarby Norrköping. Hammarby got a win under their new manager, and they're starting to maybe look quite good. That was a big game. 2 big clubs. Rickard Norling going back to Stockholm, of course, is always eventful. The former AIK man. But Hammarby got the win thanks to Bjorn Paulsen. Fantastic goal, by the way, which I'll talk about in a second. The other game we're going to talk about in a minute, Östersunds. But the other game that caught my eye, that maybe I won't go into too much, but one of the games that caught my eye really massively in this round was Varberg Boys beating EFK 2-0. Now that really surprised me. And EFK, even with their new management, just seemed to be, drifting down the road to nowhere, let's put it that way. Other games, I'll just read out the scores. Örebro 1, AIK 1. Östersunds 0, Halmstad 1, which we'll talk about in a minute. Hammarby 2, Norrköping 1. Bäckhaken 1, Elfsborg 1. Kalmar 0, Djurgården 1. So sort of a narrow win for Diff. Sirius 2, Degerfors 0. And then obviously Malby 0. Malmo 2 there.
Hammarby sort of just silently moving up the table, 21 points now. They've still got a game in hand on most of the sides. They're well in the race for the top three. Even you can't even rule out the title, I suppose. But this was a good game of football, wasn't it? Against the Norrköping, two decent sides against each other. Norling, obviously, involved there with the manager of Norrköping. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it was a really enjoyable game. As I mentioned, the fans just make everything better in life, really, don't they? The game without fans is probably just a bit of a drab affair, but with fans, it's just incredible spectacle. I really enjoyed it. I think there was 8,000 there, just over 8,000, and it really added to the atmosphere because Hammarby is one of those there's a few stadiums in Sweden that just can't be dealt with in COVID times. And Hammarby is one of them. Watching Hammarby games during COVID was almost scary, eerie, is the way I describe it. Just empty. I remember one game they played Östersunds when Ian Bertrand was there. And you could hear Ian Bertrand's coaching team shouting during the game. And it was like a big echo, like being in a dungeon or something, like a vampire dungeon. You could hear the echoes of the shouts and stuff because it's such a cavernous stadium. But, when it's empty, there's everything, it's just emptiness and people's voices echo. But when it's full, or when there's fans in it, it can get rocking, and it really did get rocking in this game. Bjorn Poulsen, the returning hero, of course. You remember, Steve, 2 years ago or so, I was raving about this player. He was a player that I would always talk about every week, saying he's going to go on to bigger, better things. He did. He went to Germany. I went to Ingolstadt, and he's been there for a while. Come back. It always seems to be a theme, doesn't it? They always come back in the end. He's returned now. He's 30 years old, and he scored the winner with an unbelievable strike. He chested it down just outside the box, let it rise on the half volley, left-footed. This is a centre back, by the way, and just half volleyed it bottom corner. Unbelievable strike. I couldn't believe it was him when I saw him running off to celebrate. But yeah, really, it was a goal worthy of winning the game because it was kind of end-to-end at times. Quite an interesting tactical battle as well. Adik Benro had put Norrköping ahead. But yeah, in the end, it was Hammarby that got the win. And as you say, their manager has made quite a good start to, I think. Obviously, winning the cup during the break was, just before the break was something that's given them a bit of a boost as well. So yeah, things are looking quite rosy for Hammarby at the moment.
Yeah, I think Hammarby and Djurgården and I think all the Stockholm teams massively missed their fans last year more than most, didn't they? So it's great to have so many back in the arena there. And the other match that you really wanted to talk upon there was one at the bottom, Östersunds losing again. Looking a bit rough for them at the moment. They're not bottom of the table, but they're not far off it. Just virtue of goal difference keeping them above Örebro. Örebro have only scored 7 goals in 12 games. How bad is that? But this was a loss for Östersund against Halmstad. Late drama, I do believe.
Yeah, they're sort of there's some defeats that you can take, and there's some defeats where alarm bells go off. And I just felt with that I felt this game there's alarm bells with Östersunds. That they're slipping and sliding at an alarming rate. And yeah, as I said, to lose to Halmstad is massive, really. It's a kind of game where you start to think, okay, they are in serious, they're in deep trouble now without a paddle type thing, without winning. This is where that's now 4 games in a row they've lost in the league. It's actually 8 losses in 9. Haven't won since May. They're a bit serious, after a reasonably good start. They're really falling away now. And it's all right when you lose to, if you look at some of the games they've lost in that 8-game losing streak, in 8 out of 9, as I say, it's all right if you lose to Djurgården. It's all right if you lose to AIK. Degerfors, you can maybe stomach. EFK, maybe you can take it. Elfsborg 3-0 the week before, you can just about handle that. But when you're losing at home to Varberg and you're losing at Mjällby 1-0, and then Halmstad last minute, 90th minute own goal from Sonko Sundberg, that is it was a gut puncher, really. I know it's early in the season, we're not even halfway yet, but to me that's a gut puncher. That's like, we are in trouble here. They're now 7 points behind Halmstad, who you'd look at it as a newly promoted team. They should be maybe relegation. There's someone you look at and maybe think you're competing against them for relegation. Now there's 7 points ahead of them already. Even a draw would have made it at least palatable. Would have that deficit wouldn't be too much. But the joint bottom now. Obviously, they're the second bottom now with a better goal difference, but they've got the same number of points as Örebro. But you start to look at it and you're like, who are they going to catch? And like I say, Steve, some games you just get that bad feeling, and that for the morale and everything, they've got a transfer ban, they can't bring in any players. Their best player, probably Blair Turgott, is at the Gold Cup in America. Real gut punch to lose to Halmstad like that.
Yeah, Halmstad, I've got to be honest, they're an absolute bastard side to face, aren't they? They just, I watched them against Djurgården the other week, 0-0. They're not a good watch, I've got to be honest. Boring, solid, no nonsense. I suppose they feel like they've got to do that this year, but I would not want to be facing them. They just seem awkward to face. That would have stung, wouldn't it? That defeat for Östersund at all. You do worry for them down there at the bottom of the table. As I say, the joint bottom with Örebro at 8 points, Mjällby on 10. Mjällby have lost 4 games in a row. There's as per usual in this league, there's some really poor sort of form developing. At the top of the table, Malmo 29 points. Just as a reminder, Djurgården 27. They do have a game in hand though, Djurgården. So if they won that, they would actually be top. Elfsborg in 3rd place, and Djurgården with a 1-0 win. They tend to specialise in a lot of clean sheets, and the winner come from Aslak von Witry, who thankfully I captained him in my fantasy, and he served me well. I know you really rate this player.
Yeah, I think pound for pound, I would go as far as to say that for me, pound for pound, Aslak von Witry is the best player in the league. I just think he's clutch, isn't he? I still don't have him in my fantasy team, which is really quite painful. I looked at the table last week, Stephen. Me and you were separated by 1 point, I think, but I'm sure that's probably changed now if you've captained him. But he's just super consistent, always there. The goal was, I think, from a set piece. He just was at the back post to tap it in. It wasn't a spectacular goal by any means, but he's just clutch. He creates assists. He defends well. He gets up and down. He's been doing it for years. Since they won the title. I cannot believe this player has not been picked up by a bigger. Usually, Steve, we have this conversation, don't we? And we'll talk about 1 or 2 transfers in a minute. Usually, this conversation comes up where it's like they've gone too early. They've left already type thing, and you're thinking to yourself, well, you didn't even really get to enjoy him. Witry, for me, is like almost the opposite. He's been around like 3 years now or so, even, and he's a Norwegian who you'd think to yourself, maybe Denmark, someone in Denmark will pick him up, or Germany, whatever. He is a quality player, in my opinion, and I think it's time for him to, not that I want players to leave this league, but I almost feel like he's too good for the league now, to be honest, and I'd like to see him test himself at a higher level. It's been great value to watch. You could argue he's been the best player of the season so far, in my opinion. As I say, I think pound for pound, he's the best player in the league. So yeah, can only really praise him highly. The Kalmar weren't spectacular in this game. Djurgården are very, very solid at this moment in time. They've got a knack of winning games. They know what they're doing. 7 goals conceded all season in 12. Best defensive record in the league by miles. No one else has conceded less than 10. So it shows you where they are. Only 1 game lost. And Witry's a massive part of that.
I'll be honest, just looking at the stats and knowing what I know about this league, I think they'll win the league from this point. Defence wins your championships, Jonathan. They always say that. And they've got that defence at this point in time, unless they lose players, of course. 103 fantasy points he's picked up as Witry. The only other guy who's picked up more than 70 is Eriksson, Magnus Eriksson, also at Djurgården. So I don't know why I've never looked at him in my fantasy, probably because he's too expensive. But Witry, absolute beast this year. You talked about transfers, and I know you want to just go and talk about a few recent ones up there in Sweden, especially, that have happened or that have caught your eye.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, I went back and listened to an episode that we did a couple of years ago where Odilon Kosunu was on our radar. He was in my 10 to watch about 3 years ago now. I think it was beginning of the 2019 season, if I'm right in saying. And we talked about him midway through the season, and he played about, I think, 266 minutes, and then he was off. Hammarby let him go, went off to Club Brugge. We talked about it on the pod. I listened back to it just to see what we'd said, and I remember at the time I said he could be a bit Bambi on ice at times, but was, had a lot of potential about him, which is why I put him in my 10 to watch. You were sort of stunned at the fact that they'd played that fee for him. I think it was 2.5 million euros or something like that after just watching him 5 or 6 times. We had a good chat about him, and yeah, it's just been confirmed he's moved to Bayer Leverkusen for a fee rumored to be, I think, 24 million euros. So, I mean, that tells you everything, really. That's a massive fee. I
wonder if it's a sell-on fee for Hammarby at all.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, actually. I'll probably come back to you on that one because the transfer window is now open. And maybe we'll talk about, as we said, we'll talk about transfers probably in a bit more detail maybe the next episode. I did notice that the Belgian Football Podcast, shout out to those guys, they gave him their Young Player of the Season, Kosunu, in Belgium last season. So shows you that, he's clearly gone on to progress well. But yeah, massive transfer for him. 30 million euros apparently with add-ons. He's still only 20 years old. I did mention at the time he's an absolute unit of a player in terms of his physical attributes. It's really impressive. I always felt it was too early to leave, but clearly I was wrong. Maybe he needed to move to Belgium immediately, and he's done that, and he's progressed. So yeah, I'm going to be excited to see him. I think it's 23 million euros up front, and then add-ons can take it to 30. But I'd be very interested to see him in Leverkusen's team alongside Edmund Tapsoba, who's a player I really like as well, by the way, the Burkina Faso international. So yes, well wishes to former Allsvenskan player Odilon Kosunu.
Yeah, I mean, I'm stunned by that myself, to be honest. Like I say, if there is a sell on, even 5-10%, that would be very, very useful for Hammarby, wouldn't it? But yeah, all the best to him there. And like you said, I think we are really going to be going to town, certainly the next episode, on a lot of these, because a lot of transfers have been happening in Norway, Sweden, in the area. And I mean, there's a lot of boxes to tick. And I think more the waters will be clearer in certainly in a few days' time when the window officially opens and movement officially can happen. It's already happened in some cases, of course. It varies depending where the player is coming from. So yeah, it's becoming that I'm not calling it the silly season by any means, but it's that time of year where Scandinavia can get raided, and it feels more than ever that it's kind of happening this year.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of bargains to be had in this league, and I think with COVID, I think clubs have less money now. I'm not entirely sure about the resale clause. I think, if I'm right in saying it, Expressen reported that Hammarby will receive SEK 15 to 20 million as a resale fee. So that would be around 1.52 million pounds, which is a hell of a lot of money, for in COVID times for a sell-on.
It is.
So they'll be delighted, to be honest with that. And just on the subject of Hammarby, there's a couple of bits of news with their European game. They've actually picked up a round of COVID cases, so there's a lot of talk at the moment about what they're going to do there and how that will affect them. And the other just tidbit of news I just wanted to say, because for me this is the quote of the week. Rikard Norling, who we the character, isn't he? Having lost to Hammarby, of course, he came out after the game and said, "It burns inside me," like the feeling of defeat. Just touching back on that game again, he was really upset about Norrköping. He just said that everything's coming together nicely in terms of our game model, but he said that the final bit in terms of getting results, doing enough to turn draws into draws into wins, defeats into draws, that kind of thing. But that was his quote. He came out and said, and especially going back to Stockholm, pretty sure that was part of the reason, but that was a direct comment from him. It burns within me. So yeah, always a character watching Rikard Norling on the touchline, and yeah, that was a very, very entertaining game, that game, I have to say.
I think my favourite quote of the season so far is still from Paul-Andre Helland, who compared scoring the goal against Rosenborg up there with the birth of his children. I mean, he's certainly a man who's said a few things down the years, but that one sticks in my mind. But yeah, I think that's roughly it for this episode, I think, John, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, two bits of news I just wanted to. I mean, we will touch on them in the future, but Alassane Yusuf, I've got to mention him. EF Core, he's left EF Core now, he's gone to I think Royal Antwerp in Belgium as well. Eric Karl has also moved to Denmark. So we will talk about those transfers. I think Aaron Donham I wanted to talk about. We'll probably run out of time in Norway. Dennis Wigren as well is one that Sirius have signed. That's an interesting one. But yeah, we'll talk more about transfers I think maybe next week. But I had to mention Yusuf just because I've got to say, Steve, just moving on to Varberg boys against EF Core. I think they are going to miss him, to be honest. And I saw a tweet from a Hacken fan who Hacken obviously leapfrogged EF Core now in the league. And he kind of he tweeted saying the universe is healing and a picture of the league table with Hacken above EF Core. So yeah, everyone thought that EF Core were going to do it really well this season. Got Marcus Berg back. They had Hamzik, obviously he's left. Pontus Wernbloom has unfortunately retired due to injury. They've had a few setbacks in recent weeks, and I think they really will miss Yusuf. So yeah, that defeat against Varberg is a big defeat, to be honest. An absolute howler, by the way, from for the first goal from their defender. But yeah, as I say, interesting weeks ahead for EF Core because they're probably going to have to fill a few gaps in that squad in the transfer market, I think.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not hopeful for them with Mikkel Starr in charge. Yeah, I know they beat the likes of Ostersunds and Mjällby, but, well, that's not exactly saying much, is it, these days? I think there's a lot to prove there at that club right now at Göteborg, isn't it? But, yes, well, we certainly will look forward to the next episode where we are going to be talking about a lot of these transfer stuff. I know there's a lot of excited fans out there who are going to be on the receiving end of some great players from this region, and rightly so. They should be excited. Belgium, as usual, gets its fair share of the pie, but not just Belgium. Some other countries certainly been lurking. Mikkel Desler went to Toulouse, for example, which is an interesting one. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this 100th episode, Jonathan. And well, next one, 101.
Turn up. We've hit the century. So yeah, like I say, thanks so much, everyone. It's been really rewarding. I hope you've got some value over the years of this pod. Personally, I have to say I've really enjoyed it. Never thought we would get to 100. So yeah, well done. Pat on the back to yourself, Steve, as well. And to everyone who's listened, of course, you're the ones who've kept us going. Without you, probably we'll just be two blokes chatting away. So no, it's really good that you found value. People who are maybe new to the league, who've discovered this crazy region of the world of football. It's really been enjoyable, and hopefully we can bring you some more episodes. I'm just going to read out a comment that we've had from Tom Dent, who was one of our 36 guests, and he's now a manager in Norway. He's currently the manager of Djursdal Blink, an English coach, and he's been on the show. And he says, favorite episodes when Meatman Soccer let the cat out of the bag. I'll let you explain that one, Steve. He said, Ben Wells giving me abuse as normal was a great episode. Eric Schörner and Sean Constable for their knowledge. Congratulations on the century. You're getting old, boys. So yeah, definitely not young boys anyway.
He's right about that. He's right. We are getting older. As for my cat, he occasionally will make an appearance, but he's happily settled in his chair tonight. So that's why he's not disturbing me. But yeah, famous episode where he startled me whilst we were talking about Bodø/Glimt in the season preview, and of course they went on to win the league.
Maybe it's a lucky omen, your pussy.
maybe it was a sign. Maybe it was a sign. Looking back, it was a moment I thought about cutting from the edit, but it was such a sort of an iconic moment that of course back then we had it on camera ourselves anyway.
Was that streaming?
It wasn't a live stream to the public. It was just me and you could see each other while we were doing the recording.
Well, I mean, the app was it the app StreamYard?
I can't remember what app it was. Something like Hangouts. Back then, I think it was.
I'll never forget that.
You definitely saw that. You saw it happen.
I'll never forget that. It jumped on you mid-episode, and you made one hell of a shriek, I have to say. You definitely shrieked, and you were startled.
So would you if you got claws into your left, right, and centre. Yeah, I've got a bit of padding on me, but not that much.
Yeah, that was a famous moment.
Yeah, attacked by a cat. In fact, it was in the itinerary, wasn't it? Meatman Soccer, cat attack.
Indeed. But yeah, no, been a great episode. Thanks a lot to everyone who's listened. Thanks for everyone who's left a voice note or a comment as well. We will be back next week. I think we'll look at transfers. We'll review everything that's gone on in the Conference League, Europa League, and Champions League. And let's see how Malmo Rangers can go, because that's going to be, we may have a preview depending when we record it, but it's going to be a big game, that one.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. Stay safe, take care, and we'll be back again very soon. Cheers again. Really appreciate you all.